Ever since the Jimmy Savile scandal, Britain has been rocked by allegations of further establishment cover-ups of child sex abuse. The result is a wide-ranging government inquiry, and now there are demands for one of Northern Ireland's most notorious sex scandals to be included. The Kincora Boys Home in Belfast witnessed horrendous sex abuse of boys in care, but it's long been haunted by allegations that the abuse was covered up to protect a British intelligence operation spying on loyalists.
Kincora has become a byword, I think, for allegations of political conspiracy and cover-up, not just of the most heinous forms of child abuse, but also potentially of one of the dirtiest episodes of the so-called Dirty War.
A public inquiry and police investigations have insisted that the abuse in Kincora was confined to the home and was not part of a wider ring operating outside the hostel. But tonight, Spotlight provides explosive testimony that says there was a sophisticated paedophile ring linked directly to Kincora.
We went to the hotel, and we would be in the lounge, and we would have drinks, and there was other gentlemen there. And one of them had asked one of us to go up to the room.
This used to be new information, and that information needs to be put before the inquiry team.
This is a child abuse scandal that I began investigating over 30 years ago. Kincora has raised many questions. How could such corruption of boys in public care go on undetected for so long? And still, it hasn't given up all its secrets. Kincora was home to teenage boys in care, about to make the transition from classroom to workplace. But it was a haven for 3 paedophile care staff. Warden Joe Mains, his deputy Raymond Semple, and housefather William McGrath stood trial and were jailed for sex offences against boys in their care in 1981. When I first began to cover the story, public attention focused on William McGrath, a preacher, an Orangeman, well connected in unionist circles, and known to leaders like Ian Paisley. Had you met McGrath before that time? Have you ever met McGrath before? Before 1975 or 1973?
Yes, I met him when he ran a faith house. He ran a faith house in, I don't know where it was, but something in the other end.
It's a story of a decades-long scandal, one that continues to this day. A story of horrific abuses perpetrated against young boys, and of how the integrity of the state and the unionist establishment was put before protection of young lives. It's a cover-up that dates back to the start of the conflict, but only now is the truth finally beginning to emerge. This is Clint Massey. Today he's speaking out on a period of his life that for years he had kept in the shadows. Clint entered the care system aged 10.
My mother left my father for another guy, and I couldn't get on with him. Bad feeling right all around. And somewhere along the line it was decided that I would go into a children's home.
At 16 he was sent to Kincora. But like so many other abused, he couldn't tell his family about the abuse.
I didn't want my mother to think of bad things that happened to me. I didn't want to put any guilt onto this woman. And up until she died, I always let her believe that I was okay in there. Nobody touched me, nobody done anything to me in there. After my first night there, The next morning, that's when it all started. I was totally stunned by what happened. And I had no comprehension of anything like that. You know, it wasn't my world, all them things. Getting woken up by this old guy's hand inside your pajamas, that was the shock of my waking up.
Clint recalls feeling powerless to do anything to stop the abuse.
Why did I not resist? You know, why did I not fight back? I couldn't fight back. And this person was officially my guardian. And, you know, I just could not fight back against him, this all-powerful man.
His abuser was William McGrath, the most violent and prolific paedophile at the hostel.
McGrath continued to rape me right up until I left.
William McGrath was more powerful than Clint could ever have imagined. In the 60s, there was a power and authority that came from unionists within Orange Lodges, and which McGrath tapped into. The leader of Orange Lodge 1303, he also controlled a shadowy doomsday organisation called TARA.
We recognise that this is total war. We recognise that this will be a long and bitter struggle.
He had been predicting blood on the streets, including on the Shankill, where I first heard him preaching, and that we would have to stand up and fight the cause. What he got was, at least initially, an evangelically led paramilitary group.
Here we see Tara's banners at a religious rally in Belfast for God and Ireland. Roy Garland was McGrath's second-in-command in Tara.
We were led to believe there's this big cataclysm coming, but in actual fact, we were creating the problem.
The 1970s began with the violence that appeared to confirm the doomsday McGrath had predicted. The onset of an IRA bombing campaign put Tara on a war footing to defend Ulster. As a result, they attracted the attention of British Army intelligence. In the 1970s, Brian Gemmell was a young undercover Army intelligence captain stationed in Northern Ireland and tasked with running an agent inside Tara to investigate loyalists, and in particular McGrath.
William McGrath, according to my source in Tara, claimed to be an agent, maybe that just means an informant, for MI6 and then MI5. But begs the question, what really was Tara? Was Tara, was it an intelligence gathering organization in the loyalist and Protestant community on behalf of the security service? Or was it a means of achieving some of their political ends? Was it an organization of influence? Was it an organization that could massage events?
What undoubtedly was of interest to British intelligence was the group of unionists who were part of McGrath's circle of influence. He had the ear of the Ulster Unionist Party leaders, like Sir Knox Cunningham, who supported Tara, and Jim Mulliner, both of whom had visited McGrath's house, as well as Unionist leaders of the future, Red Gentry, the former Stormont Minister Nelson McCausland, and John Laird, now Lord Laird, among them. But they didn't yet know about the dark secret Roy Garland had discovered, that McGrath had been abusing boys who had attended evangelical meetings.
I talked to, I reckon, at least a score of young people. This was serious abuse. This man was dangerous in terms of young people and dangerous in terms of politics. I spoke to at least a dozen clergymen, the Orange leaders, I said to the district master, in fact he said to me, I'll put my cards on the table. I know about this man. They didn't, a lot of them didn't need to tell them. They knew.
Garland didn't realise it, but complaints of abuse from residents had become an open secret. For nearly 2 decades, police, social services, and members of the Orange Order, as well as politicians, were being told about sexual abuse in Kincora. There was a growing sense that the Kincora staff were either very lucky or were for some reason being protected. So you were disappointed with the reaction to
Disappointed, and that's the word. We thought, we'd heard all these stories about the Soviet Union and the lack of freedom and the lack of transparency and so on. And we thought, it's here in Northern Ireland. And this is allowed to continue. And young kids are being destroyed and have been destroyed for decades.
In the mid-70s, Roy Garland shared his concerns with Brian Gamble.
What I was wanting from Roy Garland, who does this in Tara? What is Tara? What are their tasks? Just how real is it? How much is it a figment? How much is it a real organisation? And who are the people? In a way, what Roy wanted was to deal with the Kincora scandal, and it was a kind of quid pro quo. He gave me information, but I agreed, and I was willing, more than willing to do it, I agreed to take up the story of the abuse of boys at Kincora.
What happened next stunned the young captain. He was summoned by one of the most senior MI5 officers in Northern Ireland. Rather than report the abuse, he was told to drop his interest in Tara and Kincora, and therefore also McGrath.
I was shocked. I know I'd done a good job. I got information on Tara, a lot, but this is only the beginning of something. I had dealt with and brought to light something that was potentially criminal behaviour. The line was very clearly, drop this.
The abuse at the boys' home continued for 5 years after MI5 asked Gemmell to drop his investigation. Yet a later police report into Kincora would make no mention of this, and instead would praise the cooperation of the intelligence services. But my police sources told a very different story. They complained about MI5 obstruction. Requests to interview the MI5 officer who'd ordered Brian Gamble to drop all interest in Kincora, Tara and McGrath were ignored. MI5 simply refused to produce the officer. My sources say this amounted to a cover-up. The police report was written by Sir George Terry, a chief constable brought in from an English force. But as with a subsequent public inquiry, MI5's involvement was never meaningfully investigated.
I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say that many police officers at a senior level of the United States at that time believed that George Terry had been handed a great can of white paint and sent here to pour it over everything and cover it up. And I think his report speaks for itself. The fact that the later tribunal it didn't produce any damning or serious conclusions, again reflects an official attitude that there's nothing here but wrong.
The big question remains, what was so important about Kincora that had MI5 involved in a cover-up?
That is the question to which all of Northern Ireland still awaits answers, and particularly the boys who were abused in that home await answers. There's still been no real accountability apart from the 3 workers who were found criminally responsible. There's been no other accountability for those who perpetrated the abuse, or indeed potentially those who authorised it or who organised a subsequent cover-up.
Some of those abused at Kincora believe they suffered because MI5 chose to protect an agent and put their own operation ahead of the boys' welfare.
I'm aware that there's a section within the security forces who will use any means to achieve their goal. The fact that they had to sacrifice young boys like myself, young men like myself to do it, And that there is very, very hard to accept. I want the state to answer me, was it worth it? Your dirty tricks, was it really, really worth it? Did you get anything of any value out of it? I would say the answer to that would be no. It didn't change one thing to what was going on in Northern Ireland. Gee, damn all.
Clint's abuser, William McGrath, served 2 years of a 4-year jail sentence. In 1990, I went to his home in Ballyhalbert on the Ards Peninsula. I wanted to ask why the security services had been so keen to cover up his crimes. When I met William McGrath here in Ballyhalbert, he told me he was the only person who knew the true story of Kincora. He didn't share that with me then, and he didn't share it with anyone before he died, taking his secrets to the grave. Significantly, all the inquiries into Kincora have said the abuse started and finished in the home. All were adamant there was no paedophile ring. But all those years ago, I knew of one boy who told police he had been taken outside Kincora to have sex with unidentified men. His story blows apart the official version that has persisted for decades. 32 years ago, at the conclusion of the Kincora trial, I tried to trace a number of the former residents in Kincora. One of the boys I was particularly keen to speak to was Richard Kerr. I didn't find him then, but strangely, 2 months ago, he got in touch with me from his home here in Dallas. He's been living here since 1986. It seemed he was ready to talk about his life in Kincora. I brought with me notes on Richard Kerr, typed up in the BBC many years before. These are some notes that I've managed to keep in files. The date at the top of these notes is the 31st of October 1983, and this is the section that I find most interesting because it refers to diaries that I have access to for a time. Diaries that were kept in the drawer over the desk in the office at Kincora. And in this it tells a story about a boy from West Belfast being released on a number of weekends to an address in West Belfast. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, except that the address doesn't exist. And according to local people I spoke to, that's what I've written here, it has never existed. But the false address did not help me find Richard Kerr in 1982. What I didn't know then was that he'd already left Belfast. The name of Richard Kerr is prominent in here. He had a very important story to tell. If you read these notes, it's taken me a long time, though, to hear that story. Richard was in care from the age of 5 until he was 18. He was sexually abused at every public facility he was sent to. He arrived at Kincora when he was just 14. Warden Joe Mains appeared to have an interest in Richard's welfare.
I got close to Joseph Mains. He was the head warden of Kincora. And one night he invited me down to his office. And then he invited me to his room. And then he would talk to me and told me that I really care for you. I really like you. He made me feel special that first evening. He offered me some whiskey. And then he had some whiskey.
Richard was flattered by the attention Mains was giving him. but he was being lured into a paedophile ring.
Me and my best friend, we would go out on trips. And one time we went to the Park Avenue Hotel, and we would have be in the lounge, and we would have drinks, and there was other gentlemen there. And one of them would ask one of us to go up to the room, and we would perform oral sex in one of the rooms at the Park Avenue Hotel. And then when I would come downstairs, we acted like nothing happened, and then we'd order more drinks.
You were what age at this time?
At this time, I was going on 16. I was not 16, but I was in my 15th year.
Were there other places that you were taking?
No, there was other places. There was a hotel in Port Rush. I don't know the name of that hotel, but I do know it was on Main Street.
Was it ever made clear to you that by Joe Mains that you were expected to perform sexual favours for the other men? Did he ever say that to you?
No, not at first. When we would drive out, we would get there. It was always alcohol that I would be asked to drink. And he would say to me that, we have somebody nice. Why don't you go up and spend some time with him? He's got a gift for you.
Right.
And they would sit in the bar area while I would go upstairs in the elevator to a room. We were walking in, and this person says, well, get comfortable, just relax, everything's going to be fine. And they would get on the bed with me, and we would have a sexual encounter.
What sort of gifts did they give you there? Did you receive a gift?
Chocolates, things like that. A watch, a small transmit radio, just little gifts.
The years of abuse have left Richard very damaged and in need of professional help.
When you're dealing with people that have his kind of problems, they don't recognize the post-traumatic stress disorder type of situation which he has. Those who have gone through the kind of extraordinary stress that he has had do display these symptoms. And in some cases, they don't display them until later in life. They're able to adapt to the type of abusive daily routine that seems to be ordinary. And then once they see that it's not ordinary, then it becomes one that they are feeling guilty and shameful about.
It was clear the boys in the hostel, like Richard, felt trapped and alone.
I would talk to my friend when we were in our bedrooms at night, and he said, it's always best not to say nothing, Richard. Nobody's going to believe you.
What's shocking is that Richard had informed the police during interviews in the early 1980s about being taken to hotels and private houses for sex. But the police rejected this as evidence of an organised paedophile network. Today, Richard is adamant that he and a friend of his, who he says killed himself as a result of the abuse, were the victims of a paedophile ring.
Looking back with an open mind, I can see that there was a vast, huge group of people were involved in this.
It was a network.
It was a huge network. Because children that I have spoken to have said that this has been done to them. It was done to my friends. It was done to people that I came into contact after they left the home. It was surely done to people of my friends who committed suicide.
What we have revealed tonight indicates that the extent of crimes and the cover-up at Kincora is much wider than previously thought, and casts a shadow over the cover-up that has been denied for decades. Richard Kerr's testimony has strengthened demands for a full inquiry.
What we're talking about here is not simply what came to light in the criminal trial in 1981 with 3 men found guilty, but what we're talking about potentially is a very well organised paedophile ring. Those boys deserve the truth, and wider society deserves and is entitled to accountability for that sort of criminal activity.
In Great Britain, the Jimmy Savile scandal has been followed by a number of deeply troubling cases where those in positions of power and authority appear to have failed to have acted on information about child abuse. It's for this reason that the government has set up an overarching inquiry into institutional abuse. Many are calling for Kincora to be included in that new inquiry, among them Keith Vaz MP, Chair of the Home Affairs Committee at Westminster. I showed him part of Richard Kerr's interview.
Why don't you go up and spend some time with him? He's got a gift for you.
What are your thoughts, Randy?
Because obviously it's pretty shocking that anyone of that age should be put through that kind of mental and emotional torture. It is obviously very difficult for the person concerned to recount it, because it's something that must have affected deeply at that age. There seems to be new information, and that information needs to be put before the inquiry team so that we can examine everything.
Those children were exploited. Was there a cover-up? It needs a national investigation. That's why we...
Last week, the Stormont Assembly called for Kincora to be included in the Westminster inquiry, to be led by Solicitor Fiona Wolfe. But central to any inquiry into Kincora is that it must have powers to get answers from MI5 about why it failed to report allegations of sex abuse in 1975 and why it obstructed a subsequent police investigation. Effectively, that represented a cover-up of the sex abuse at Kincora, but it may also have contributed to a cover-up of what seems to have been a sophisticated and much wider paedophile ring.
Other people were dictating our path through life there, and they used that. I just hope they're proud of themselves. You know, I really do. They're no doubt though. Yeah, they probably think, yeah, we had to do it. No, we didn't bloody have to do it. You know, if that's the only way you're going to get a result, well then you're doing something wrong. You know, surely we're above that. As a society, we're far more intelligent than that. No.
Is it on any level, as far as you're concerned, acceptable that an operation centred on a boys' hostel should allow abuse to continue?
No. And that is why, when Lady Wolfe conducts her inquiry, we will expect her to ask these questions in an open and transparent way, the reasons why this was allowed to continue. And it is for her to be able to probe that. But we will be expecting that to happen, and we will be putting that to her when she appears before us.
Brian Gemmell says he left intelligence not long after his Kincora assignment. He could no longer reconcile his career with his conscience. He'd been troubled for years by what had happened back in the 70s. So what would have happened had you gone to the police? You could have stopped the suffering, a long time earlier for some of these young men.
Yeah, I accept that. Yeah.
In order to put that right, will you be prepared to give evidence to an inquiry?
I will. And I deeply regret, retrospectively, that as a young man, I didn't throw my career to the wind. I'm deeply sorry, and I apologize to any of those victims, all of those victims who suffered, because I didn't do what I didn't have the guts to do then what I've got the guts to do now.
No inquiry has ever before taken the evidence of Brian Gemmell, so central to the revelation of an MI5 cover-up. Spotlight asked the Home Office and MI5 for comment on the allegations of cover-up. the Home Office told us it would not comment on security matters and wouldn't confirm or deny the identities of agents.